And welcome to Tara Mini Reads, Reviews, Discusses, Monologues about everything and anything, and that's on period. Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. I wanted to do a reading wrap up of the year. Okay, so as of the time that I am recording this video, I have read about 60 books in 2025, and a lot of books, a lot of books. I don't even know where I found the time, but focus. Okay, so this is so chaotic. But I read 60 books in the year of 2025, and these are my top picks, not in any particular order. I have obviously talked about these books throughout the year, the course of this year. So some of them are definitely not going to be surprises. I will say one thing though. I will definitely do a follow-up video where I talk about the books that were not my best reads of 2025. So make sure you keep an eye out for that one. But anyways, let's get into my top reads for 2025. So, the first one, which is not going to be a shock to anyone, is going to be Broken by Fatima Bala. I read this book like early in the, let's say like January, February, and I can still tell you everything that went on in that book. That's like one of the hallmarks of a really good story because it stays with you. Like you remember it, you like unprovoked, you know? So this one was a really good read. We follow, this is set in Nigeria, northern Nigeria, where they are Muslims and there are certain cultures. So we see these two individuals. I don't remember their names. Don't quote me. But we see these two individuals who are basically, he is her brother's friend and she's like the younger sister, but they kind of fall in love when they go to study in Canada. And a couple of things happen when they declare their, intentions for each other. And then something happens that tends to almost derail the whole thing. So I think, Broken just is a book of such great longing and sticking to who you are really, because the male character, he definitely fought for his love. Like he went all out, and I really applaud that. This is from someone that was touted as like a playboy, so you could see that 360 turnaround in this character, and it literally stays with me. So I'm actually going to do a reread at some point because I just really enjoyed that book. So the next five-star book for me in 2025 was Hyperion by Dan Simmons. I am a sci-fi girl to some extent. Now, I have read like Red Rising and a couple other. I actually read Empire of Silence and I didn't like it. So that's why I'm like, yeah, I'm more fantasy leaning. But I read Red Rising and I loved it. So when I read Empire of Silence, I was like, yeah, I don't like sci-fi. But somehow I stumbled on this book. Hyperion was not published in any recent time. This is like a really old book published in like the 50s or the 40s or something like that. So you can imagine how good a story is that 50 years later, it still has such a fantastic impact. It's still phenomenal and it's still very like current. Like, sci-fi is about projecting, thinking about future things that has not yet happened. So there are some things that are mentioned in this book. I'm like, okay, like this was written in the 50s? Like, come on. Brilliant. That's all I'm going to say. It is a brilliant book. And this is also one of the ones where I would say is truly like maybe a sci-fi fantasy book because there are some fantasy elements in it and there is that sci-fi part of it. So Hyperion, a top read. I read the second book in that series, The Fall of Hyperion. It wasn't so much my fave, but not because it took away from the story. I guess it was more the format of how the book was written. But one of my best reads that I read in 2025, everybody should at some point read Hyperion. And I have to say, it's actually different from Dune because I tried to read Dune and I couldn't get into it because the writing was so old school, which if you know, Dune was also written way back when. So the writing was so tedious. Until today, I haven't read Dune. Don't judge me. We all do it. So imagine my surprise, picking up this book, and it was just easy from the get. There weren't any weird. It wasn't tedious. It was just phenomenal. The writing, the prose, everything is just top notch, top notch. Okay. So I feel like I've talked Hyperion up a lot. Okay, so now I'm gonna go to my next one, which was okay. So this one is a very, 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 very good read that I read in 2025. Didn't come out in 2025. That would be Out on a Limb by Hannah Young. I love this book. This is a romance book, so it's not high stakes, not fantasy or anything like that, but it's more humanity based because we follow this two individuals, Win and Bo, who are Win, who's the lady. She's disabled. She has like a shorter hand or arm. I'm not sure. She has a shorter hand. And Bo is also disabled. I think he doesn't have a leg or something. He has a prosthetic. So we follow this, two individuals who have, this physical drawbacks that should really affect them or, make them seem less. But, the story was beautiful. It was a love story. It was a romance, but you could see, like, I just loved it. I don't want to talk too much about this because I made a whole video on this specific book because that's how much I loved Out on a Limb. So if you have not watched that video, please go through. I'll try and link it below. But yeah, Out on a Limb was phenomenal. I loved it. And I think, it's if you're not exposed to, people with disabilities, this is a good one for you because you learn empathy. I mean, I'm not saying you need to pity people, but it was just phenomenal. I'm like, ugh, it was such a good book. So, the next book that I read in 2025 that was such a fantastic read will be Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Now, if you've been following me, again, you know that I was completely blown away when I read these books. They are a book series. There's about 3 of them in the series right now. A fourth one is coming out next year. So phenomenal. We are, again, this was such a surprising read because I feel like this year, a lot of my top reads were more sci-fi books, which is so interesting. But that's probably because I read all the fantasy books and that's why I'm branching out. I don't know. But anyways, Children of Time, we follow this group of explorers where Earth has been destroyed and you see them taken to the stars to try to find refuge and build a home in space. A couple of things are going on in the stories. I am, still currently reading the series. Like I said, there's another one coming out next year. So, all good things. But I think the first book, Children of Time, was a solid, solid entry. And, there's one thing I think I mourn is the fact that, when you start a very good book, you don't know, like, oh my God, this book is going to be good, right? But you just started so casually. It's like watching a TV show. Like, you're like, can I go back to, who I was before I started reading this so that I feel the impact again? There's only one one author's books that I've read that even on rereads, I get that feeling. And obviously that's not a surprise. That's Sanderson because, oh my God, like I did a reread for Wind and Truth last year, and I was bawling. And Words of Rage, like all of the books hit me, even though I have read these books before. So it's really hard to get that initial feeling back when you start a series and you're just like, this is the best thing I have ever read or watched, whatever. So I think Children of Time is and maybe I'll have to see on reread if I do get that feeling back. But I just wish there was a way you could kind of bottle it up. And, whenever you want to start a reread, you can just, I don't know, down it and you just be like, oh. But I think I'm going crazy. This is so chaotic. Okay. So Another book that I read in 2025 that was a very good read for me, that would be Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. So I did a video closer to the end of the year. I've had this book in my Kindle library since June, but I just never got to it. And I was on a flight and it's like, you know what, I have time. It was downloaded on my phone and I picked it up. Like the cabin lights were off, so I didn't want to turn on my reading light and disturb the people beside me. And so I was like, okay, fine, I'll look for something on my Kindle. And DCC was one of the ones that was downloaded, ready to go. I was like, okay, hot off the press, let's get it. And it was so good. It was so good. It was so, so good. I am not a LitRPG girl, but baby, maybe I should be because I loved it. I loved it so much. Like it was such a good read. We follow Carl goes out in the middle of the night because his cat escaped the house or ran away or got out of the house, and he's trying to go and bring the cat back in. If you have a pet, you understand. Like your pets sometimes leave the house and you kind of have to race to, save them. So this is exactly what Carl is facing. And just as he's outside trying to figure out how to get Donut off the tree, boom, the whole world literally ends, basically. And then there's this cheeky AI coming on to say, oh yeah, we just basically took over this world. It was basically like a hostile takeover. And they offer this like a, oh, well, if like, they offer this out to say like there is something called a dungeon crawl where you can go in. It's like a leveling type of thing where you have to get through each level, and if you are able to complete all levels safely, not killed, you'll be able to get your freedom back. So basically we followed Carl on this adventure, going down the levels in the dungeon and fighting beasts and creatures and monsters. And if you play video games, you see Carl, he has this pop up a GUI of his stats that shows his health, it shows what he has. It's so fascinating. I really enjoyed DCC. I have continued on in the other books in the series. It's not finished. There's 7 books out, so hopefully, by the time I get to book 7, a new one will be out. And I don't know if I would be. I probably will because I really enjoy it. I think the momentum is going to keep on going. I think it's going to keep on going. Now, I'm going to do one honorable mention, and I'm going to do my most favorite book, top read of 2025. Now, honorable mention would be Homeseeking by Carissa Chen. I read this book early in summer or way back when, and it kind of stayed with me. It was a very poignant, compelling read, right? And again, it's that longing where you see this 2 people, Haiwan and I forget the girl's name. They were separated. They were lovers when they were neighbors, and then they got separated. And through just unseen events, they meet themselves after so many years apart. But I am such a sucker for just a really good multi-generational story if it's told right. And this one, it was told right. The reason why it's not a 5-star read for me was probably because of the ending. Like, I feel like she could have stretched that ending a little. Okay? Like, we could have gotten the reunion that we needed. Okay? But it was still a phenomenal read. I enjoyed it. Like, it was 100%. Like, this book, I was bawling as I was reading this book. So, this was a very impactful top read for me, 2025, and I loved it. Okay, so my best book that I read in 2025, actually, it did come out in 2025, so don't judge me. And I don't think it's a surprise to anybody, but this will be Isles of the Ember Dark by Brandon Sanderson. Now, I have read all of Brandon Sanderson books. Well, apart from like the younger ones and like the ones for the younger ages, but basically all the books in Stormlight Archive, all the books in what is this other series, everything that he's written, right? So House of the Ember Dark is part of something called a secret project where way back when Brandon had come up with this idea, this was around COVID, and he came up with this idea to write a couple of books, 4 books to be precise, and he would release them every quarter. So we got 1 book per quarter. I also have the Ember Dark just tacked on and became like the fifth book. I have them right, like you can like you can see them behind me, basically. But Out of the Ember Dark was phenomenal. I loved it so much. We follow Six of the Dusk, which there was previously a novella about this book. So it's not like a book that it's not a world that we are not familiar with. So obviously, but then one good thing that Brandon Sanderson did is that he now brought in that novella into the actual book, and he enlarged it and made it more recent with the times, which I was like, ding, 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 that's so smart, right? So you didn't even have to go back to the original novella. It was already in the one book, and you could just read it. So I loved Isles of the Ember Dark. We got more insight into, Roshar and, well, kind of parts of Roshar and Patchy, and a couple of things that were not explained in the previous books. But I think Isles of the Ember Dark is just a phenomenal entry into. Do I say Stormlight? Yeah, I think it is Stormlight, right? Yeah, I think so, because that's what it's not Miss. Well, no. So yeah, it could be Mistborn, it could be Stormlight. Basically, it's a good entry into the Cosmere. That's the word I was looking for. But you definitely, there's so much cross, references between Stormlight Archive, between Mistborn and other planets. Like I think Tris or Chris. Sorry, Chris is mentioned. So there's so much, so many, many, many little Easter eggs. I loved it. So yeah, those were all the books that I love, 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 love in 2025. My top reads, my top picks. And like I said, let me know if you read any of the books, if you agree with my ratings, and if you read any books that were top reads in 2025, let me know in the comments. And like I said, I will be doing another video where I'm going to talk about like the worst books that I read in 2025. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry this was a bit chaotic, but it's the end of the year, man. Ready for 2026. But anyways, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.